Hello and welcome to today's webcast hosted by the Sales Management Association. Our session will start in just a few moments. First, got just a few very brief announcements. First, please note that we will not open the attendees' audio or video lines during our session and during the Q&A portion. However, we do very much welcome your questions and comments. You may submit these at any time by simply typing them into the chat window, which you'll notice to the right of this video display window. So if you submit your questions there, then I'll read them on your behalf during our Q&A. Also, as a reminder, today's session is being recorded. We'll make it available for playback in the Sales Management Association's resource library. Our members will be able to download copies of today's slides there and view the archive of the live session. Today's session is one in a series of web-based Sales Management Association presentations that feature practitioners and thought leaders in the field of Salesforce effectiveness. The Sales Management Association is a professional association for sales operations, enablement, effectiveness, and leadership professions. If you're joining us for the first time, we encourage you to consider membership in the association. And to learn more about us, you can see us online at salesmanagement.org. I'm Bob Kelly, Sales Management Association Chairman, and it's my pleasure today to introduce our guest speaker, Dario Priolo. Dario Priolo is Chief Marketing Officer at Cyalytics, formerly known as Celleration. He has been focused on the sales enablement, learning, and development market for the past 20 years and has served as a C-level or senior executive for several of its best-known firms, including Miller Heiman, Sales Performance International, Richardson, and Profiles International. He currently oversees marketing at Cyalytics, a firm which recently announced its new name after a merger of Celleration and a firm called Digital Chalk. So this combined entity brings that legacy and experience, and is also focused on experiential and game-based sales training solutions in today's market. Dario Priolo, thank you so much for being with us today. It's great to have you. Welcome.
Thanks, Bob. Welcome, everybody. Great to be here, and thanks so much for taking time to talk with us.
Terrific. I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'll look forward to your thoughts. Thank you, Dario.
Okay, Bob, great. Well, let me just kick things off again. You know, I kind of joke about this. I have the dubious distinction of being the former CMO of Miller Heiman Richardson and SPI. So I couldn't have imagined back when I was going through engineering school as an undergrad that I would spend my career in the sales training and sales enablement industry. But here I am 20 years later. And actually, it's been a great place. It's just unbelievable the amount of change that I have seen over the time that I've been in the industry, and that change has just dramatically accelerated. I mean, it was changing quickly, but certainly, you know, the past 18 months have, you know, the past 6 or 9 months have really accelerated changes that were almost inevitable. So I'm really excited to meet with you here today. I call myself a facilitator. Today, we don't claim to have all the answers. We certainly have a point of view and a lot of experience that we're going to share. Bob and I have done some research that are informing our opinions and our recommendations. But we're going to have a number of polls here. And we would love for you to participate in the poll, love for you to participate in the chat, and even at some point in the presentation, we may even ask for people to come on camera and offer their suggestions. So we want this to be as interactive as a Zoom session can possibly be. And I think, again, this is just something that we all have to deal with as the whole topic of sales kickoff probably is on our radar screens or will be approaching very, very quickly. So let's move forward here. We're just going to start with a poll. So I want to know of everybody on this call, simple yes or no, how many of you expect to have an in-person sales kickoff in Q1 or Q2 of 2021? Okay, so if you could, Bob, I believe you're going to put a poll up and enable people to do some voting.
Yes, indeed. So I'll try my best to give some good instructions for the poll. In order to access the poll, we need you to go to a separate webpage. It's pollev.com and /SMA polls. And if you prefer to use text, you can text to SMA polls one time. I'm sorry, text the word SMA polls to 22333 one time to join, and you'll receive further instructions there. I'll also paste that link in the chat window now.
So I'd probably say, Bob, if we asked this question last year at this time, we would probably have, I would say, a 90 to 95% yes, right? I mean, everyone seems to have sales kickoff oftentimes in, whatever, January, February. Sometimes they get pushed a little bit later, depending on when your fiscal year end is. But certainly, that first quarter or early part of the second quarter is a very popular time for these types of things to happen. Boy,
okay. You can see we have a horse race underway now.
Wow. Oh, that's so cool. I love it.
It's by dint of sheer dumb luck that I've made this work. I'll have you know, but perhaps I shouldn't say that out loud.
Yeah. Well, congrats to everybody who's able to participate, and obviously your instructions were good enough that they've managed to share their insights with us.
Now, if you like, we can come back to this, but it appears that we're getting more yeses than I would have expected, but we're getting 2 to 1 in favor of no.
Yeah, because Bob and I did a webinar last week where we shared the results of some research that Bob had done. We had done together over the summer, and basically the number of organizations that expected to do live in-person sales kickoffs was less than 10%. So we're doing a little bit better than that here. Or are we? It's funny. It looks like some people are changing their answers. But yeah, so 4 out of 20. So that's 20%. But it's a very low number. Like I said, a year ago this time, that would have been probably, 90% yes, right? Now it's whatever, whether it's 10% or 20%, it's still a significantly smaller proportion will be doing live sales kickoffs. And for those who are doing live sales kickoffs, I tip my hat to you. I cannot imagine how the things you have to go through to orchestrate a live sales kickoff in this environment have to be monumental. So hats off to you. But, Bob,
to look at the
lower now. So now we're down to 15%. Yeah. So, but Bob, remember the good old days, right? I talked about it as if it was just a year ago, and it was. The good old days of sales kickoff meetings. You would, fly everybody into Vegas, and you'd have, a convention center of, conference rooms in a casino. And you had all sorts of, hoopla and signage and food and presentations and keynotes and special guests. And if you had a really good year and if you're with the right company, maybe you had a rock concert, right? Or some sort of, pretty cool, memorable social event, So, cool social events and cool venues, lots and lots of content, lots of interaction, lots of whatever, lots of fun, lots of work, but obviously, a lot of that stuff you see here. If we're going from 90% down to 15%, this is the type of stuff that's really hard to replicate, and we'll talk more about that today. But let's, Bob, go back to the poll here, and just from your perspective, audience, what makes for a good sales kickoff? And you can believe this is going to be an open text answer, right, Bob? That's going to kind of bubble up into a tag cloud. But yeah, just Bob's going to bring up the poll, and feel free to offer as many whatever adjectives or nouns that or verbs, right, that sort of imply that you got a lot of value out of a sales kickoff. What makes for a good sales kickoff?
Again, and just to reiterate instructions for participating in this poll, you'll have an opportunity to do a short answer text, a word or two. You can do that by clicking on the link in the chat window. It's actually pollev.com/SMA polls. I'll do my best to make that actually a clickable.
This is great. You can come in, gang. You can vote more than once here. I don't want to get political with that comment.
Yeah, that sounded
cool.
Like
engaging,
current
peer networking. This is great. This is great. Fun, dynamic content. Setting up for a great year. Engagement. Positivity. Plan. Speakers. Cool. This has been great, Bob. I think we kind of get the picture, right?
Righto.
So yeah. So anyway, when Bob and I were kind of going through the planning here, we'd asked some of our whatever compatriots what makes for a good sales kickoff, and certainly brought a lot of our own thinking to the table based on our experience. But like a good sales kickoff, I think from a C-level perspective, helps get the organization aligned. So a lot of times what's happening at these meetings is that the C-suite has a vision for the year, a strategy, and you're rolling that out among other things, and you're trying to get the sales team aligned. You're trying to get people motivated. You're informing them on a lot of things. You're informing them on strategic things. You're informing them on tactical things. For example, a lot of new products get rolled out at sales kickoff meetings. A lot of new kind of sales strategies, or maybe you have a new methodology. A lot of that gets rolled out. Connecting. I think again, you look at the photo here, right? I mean, it's people are coming together, both formally and informally, and sometimes it's that informal connection that really pays dividends. I mean, this is building your network within your organization, and you just never know sometimes who you need to tap in order to help you through a situation. So that networking and connecting is in live face-to-face, right, is really important. Celebrating, so certainly celebrating success, recognizing people who have been top performers. I think that's all really important. Again, because what it does is it gives people, someone said hope in the tag cloud, right? Hope, vision, get these top performers sharing what they do that makes them so successful to help make everybody better. And again, that's all part of building the culture, right? The culture of the organization. At the end of the day, we're a bunch of people that are kind of brought together to do different things, right? To do a job, but there are certain things that really keep us at organizations and kind of drive us, right? To kind of go above and beyond and to help the organization be successful. And ultimately, to have fun, right? I mean, good salespeople will always have a lot of opportunities, I think, regardless of, the economy or whatever else is happening. And, whatever, I mean, to the extent that you can create a great culture that people enjoy coming to work day to day, whether it's live or virtual, I mean, that's all great stuff. So all of this helps make for a really good sales kickoff meeting. So Bob, let's just go one more poll here before we kind of get into the meat of the presentation. But what makes for a bad sales kickoff? So I'm sure a number of you have either, there have been years where, oh my God, that sales, you're flying home from Las Vegas and that you're scratching your head and you're shaking your head and it's like, oh my God, this was terrible. Like, why did we do this? Yeah, the food sucked. The speakers were bad. People weren't prepared. Didn't learn anything. No tangible takeaways. There's just information overload. It was one thing after the other. Absolutely, yeah. Death by PowerPoint. You see that all the time. Long sessions. Oh my God, yeah. So this is all great stuff. Just give it one more second here. Thanks everybody so much for sharing your thoughts here. And Bob, this poll is really cool. I really happy that you kind of dug up this little solution here. I think it's really neat. So yeah, too much content, long. So again, that's sort of like Bob lines up with what we anticipated here. At the end of the day, it's just way too much information, information overload, and too little time. I mean, like, you're there, like, the networking is important, right? You either want to, meet your peers, you want to learn from your peers, and usually that's an afterthought, right? So there's just really good sort of, that's one of the benefits here. Irrelevant activities, whether it's, content from a session or other things that you just, maybe you've got to go through your compliance training, right? And it's like, oh my God, why do we waste good kind of live sales kickoff time for HR to come and tell us about, the latest, whatever, check the box compliance thing that we had to deal with. So Bob, hey, let's go back to the deck, Bob. So this was really awesome, guys. Thanks so much. So I think we've set up a nice contrast here, right, between what makes for a good sales kickoff and what makes for a bad sales kickoff. And those are things that we all have to keep in mind. I think as sales kickoffs go virtual, what makes the good good and the bad bad become even more amplified, right? It's hard to make the good stuff that we talked about good when you can't get together face to face. And it's easy, you think about this stuff here, it's easy to make things bad. And the one thing I want to just caution everybody, and I'm sure you're all anticipating this and you're struggling with it, but, so 2020, I mean, this has been the year of Zoom, as we've gone from, live to virtual, and whether it's in our jobs, right, the day-to-day things that we do in our jobs. And when I say Zoom, maybe it's Microsoft Teams or GoToMeeting or Google Meet or whatever conferencing, software you're using. But, I probably spend at least 8 hours a day on, Zoom conferences right now. Our kids are spending, even like 5-year-olds, have to do virtual kindergarten, and they're spending all this time, and parents have to, get their kids ready for school, and they're going to be in front of Zoom and trying to do their job. I mean, we're in this world of, like, Zoom is great for many, many things, but it's also, easy to overdo it. It's bad for certain things. And that's the one thing I want to take away here. We got to just be really careful that we don't kill people. Good intentions, but it can't just be, hey, let's take all that stuff, we can't have any of the fun that we did with a live event because whatever, we just can't do that now because we're not going to be live. And we're going to take all that content that we were going to present live, and now we're just going to do it over Zoom. Okay, that just isn't going to work. And I've been a part of many, many virtual conferences and summits where it's been like presentation after presentation after presentation. And probably after about 2 or 3, you're just fried. We'll talk more about that. But again, like Zoom or whatever, Hangouts or Google Meet, I mean, on one hand, it's great. I mean, there are a lot of benefits, and I want you to really be thinking about this in terms of leveraging these types of tools when you're doing your virtual sales kickoff. I mean, one of the great things about it is that it's so easy to include customers and leaders and experts. Before, getting a customer to come to your sales kickoff meeting in Las Vegas or whatever, that was a major commitment for them. It's a major time commitment. They've got to travel, and you have the cost of it, but that's usually immaterial. But you got to get people there. They've got to give up the time. It's a major, major commitment, and it's hard to do. Even, your leaders, oftentimes, leaders have a very short window when they can kind of, be in a certain place at a certain time. And, and it's just hard for people to get adequate access to them. Same with experts. I mean, you can roll in all sorts of experts now, and you got to be careful not to overdo it. But it's not nearly as difficult logistically as a live meeting. So there's some great things to do with Zoom. Think similar, like, chat, Q&A, similar to what we're trying to do here. We want interaction. I know interaction's hard, but there is great opportunity to get information and insight from the audience. You have to be prepared for it. We'll talk a little bit about, technology and all that, but there's a lot of great things that you can do. You can get a lot of really good information if you've planned properly. Same with, like, the ability to break out into groups. That's actually not difficult to do. And it can be really, really effective. You can include global coworkers. Oftentimes it's like, well, we have to have our US-based meeting, and then we've got other people in other parts of the world. Just, logistically, it doesn't make sense to bring people together into one spot. It's long, it's hard, it's expensive. And then finally, the ability to record and archive sessions. That's really good. I mean, you can do pre-recorded sessions, you can do live sessions, you can record those sessions. There's a lot that you can do. You have a lot of flexibility, but you also have some really significant challenges that have to be thought through. I mean, first of all, like connectivity and audio. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, with everybody, like in my house, my daughter is home from college, my son's in high school, kind of doing a hybrid. My wife and I are constantly on Zoom. We got the FiOS gig speed network, and it's actually been great. But there are times when everybody's on it, and for whatever reason, it slows down, and you have to anticipate that. Audio issues, right? Audio and video issues, especially what I found is that, certain people, if they're not real sort of tech savvy, they can have trouble, setting up a mic, or if they don't do this a lot, they'll lean back from their microphone, and next thing you know, they're kind of out of the zone, and the microphone isn't picking them up anymore, and that's really frustrating. This can be a very passive experience as well. I mean, you could say, okay, everyone, you're going to sit down for 8 hours, and we're going to just inundate you with information from our presenters on Zoom. Okay, 8 1-hour sessions, and you're going to just sit there, and I don't know whether you're going to take notes or what, or probably what happens is you're going to check out, you're going to go onto your phone, you're going to go onto Facebook, you're going to play a game, you're going to whatever, do all sorts of other stuff. And then you have just the standard work from home distractions. I mean, we're all dealing with this. We have working from home. Oh, there's the dog. The dog needs to go to the bathroom, needs to be fed, or the whatever, the delivery man's at the door. Like, there's all sorts of things now that are new and different, and they're distracting, and you have to give people a certain amount of latitude to deal with that stuff. And then, of course, after a while, it's just exhausting. So you can only spend so much time in front of a computer passively. It's one thing if you're participating. It's one thing if you're talking and thinking and troubleshooting. But if you're just sitting back and watching, it's one thing to binge watch, on Netflix or YouTube. But binge watching, sales kickoff presentations, that's a tough one. So just have this in the back of your mind as we move forward here, and really think about how to create a great sales kickoff experience, probably using some kind of a web conferencing system like Zoom. Again, the realities of the new normal. What I really strongly suggest is that, just because of this, like you've got kids at home, you've got pets at home, you've got other distractions of home. Shorter sessions, fewer sessions, plenty of opportunities for people to sort of, tend to some of these work from home issues, right, that they have to deal with. Sensitivity to people's schedules, knowing that they may have kids in the house, right, that they got to kind of get those kids into the rhythm of school early in the morning, like 3 o'clock, that type of thing. Hey, school's wrapped up now. I mean, what am I going to do with my kids, right? So it's just having a lot of sort of awareness of that, your audience, and we'll talk about how to sort of generate more of that awareness through your planning process. But certainly being aware of the fact that, look, if you're doing this from home and people are working from home, it's going to be different. And then the need for active versus passive activities. Again, it can't just be, we're going to lecture to you for 8 hours for the next 3 days. People they'll be checked out after the first 45 minutes. Okay, and you're never going to get them back. Cool. So just some things. Work from home. Just be sensitive to the new normal here. So the first area I want to go with you is just around your production platform. And it's interesting because, Bob uses this StreamYard, and it's great. I mean, every single one has their strengths, and some have their weaknesses and their quirks. But if you're orchestrating your sales kickoff meeting for your organization, you absolutely have to be a master of that platform. You have to know how it works, or get a dedicated producer, somebody that really knows how to do it, so that you don't have to kind of, be consumed with the nitty gritty of the operational details. You can focus on sort of making sure that your speakers are prepared, making sure that you've got a really good agenda, that things are coming together. If you can find a dedicated producer, and again, I use that word, producer, it doesn't have to be a professional movie producer. It could be somebody on your team or somebody in the organization who, maybe in the IT department or technical support, who is just good at this stuff. find them, sign them up, and leverage them, so you don't have to worry about all this stuff, because there's a lot of little nuances. And the other thing is that, especially like with Zoom, they're rolling out new releases almost probably weekly at a minimum. And every time they roll out a new release, something happens in Windows, some security setting gets triggered, and next thing you know, you're on and there's no sound, or there's no video, or Windows has to got to shut it down and restart it. So there's all sorts of issues here that are beyond your control that can go wrong, and you have to be able to anticipate them and whatever, not get caught, right? Because the last thing you want is to kind of get pushed off your agenda, especially really early in your SKO, because you got a technical issue. I mean, that just gets things off to a really terrible start. It puts you under just immense pressure, and you don't want to be under that. You want things to kind of be as smooth as possible. Things like, knowing your audience's size and location. I mean, again, Zoom is great, but the version of Zoom that I have, you can't have more than 250 people on it. And up to this point, you may not have needed that, but now you've got, your entire organization. Maybe you have people in other parts of the world that have different sort of bandwidth considerations. Maybe you have an extended enterprise, right? So not only is this going to be, participation from our sales team, but our marketing and our product team are going to be a part of this. And now it's like, okay, I've exceeded my 250 allotment, right? So I got to make sure that I know how many people exactly need to be on at once, so that I can maybe up my license to accommodate them. And again, making sure speakers have the right audio. It's testing them, right? Knowing, they're going to be in their home. Everyone's going to have probably a different mic. Some people may be using their computer microphone. Other people may have other things, but you want them to, you're going to have to go through a testing protocol. And that's where, again, having a dedicated producer can be really helpful. You can delegate a lot of that stuff off, but at the end of the day, like, you don't want one of your speakers not being able to, get their camera to work, right? I mean, yeah, they can get through the presentation, but it throws them and it throws you, and it's just not part of a great experience. So first, know your production platform. Okay, simple. Next here, and guys, Bob, at any point in time, feel free to have people chat questions. Happy to pause and take questions, Bob. So.
Sounds good. In fact, I'm going to make an appeal in the chat window now for anyone who is brave enough to appear in the live feed with us a little bit later in the session. So give that some thought.
Cool.
Yeah.
So Bob, I know you've done some research on this, but I think this year, especially for your sales kickoff, it is essential to do, I call it top-down and bottom-up planning. So top-down, you want to interview your leaders. Bottom-up, you want to survey your participants. And in doing that, you want to make sure that you really understand sort of like the strategic needs of the organization, right? Like whether it's your CEO or your chief product officer or your chief revenue officer, they're going to need airtime, right? They're going to need to cover certain topics. You want to make sure that you fully understand what they need and ultimately what they want, people to come away with from the sales kickoff, right? So then you can start to help guide them through the development of the agenda and other types of activities that are going to get you there. But the bottom up is really important too, because that's where, again, you can I think just better understand things like the work from home issues that people may have, the connectivity issues, also their needs, right? What do people want to get out of this? From the bottom up. I mean, it's really important to understand what they want to get out of it, so that, again, you've got top-down stuff, you've got bottom-up stuff. There's not always alignment there. So the more that from the bottom up, you can then inform leaders, hey, this is what the field really wants and needs. I know you got the stuff that you want to sort of push down on the organization, but we got to accommodate some of this other stuff as well.
Yeah, Dario, I would also point out that that your chart, I didn't mean to make it go away. Let me put it back. It might have a horizontal component too, which is the before, during, and after this meeting, and as it relates to planning. So you mentioned some research we did on this topic. In fact, we've done multiple research initiatives on sales kickoff effectiveness over the past 10 years. And I wanted to summarize our most recent study. It basically surfaced three things that characterize the companies that have the very best sales kickoff. These are three things that these companies do. They first plan early. Secondly, they incorporate feedback in some very specific ways from multiple audiences, from not just attendees, but also speakers and co-presenters and leadership. And they incorporate that in defining the topics and the format. And thirdly, they measure the effectiveness of the program, which brings us back to the planning and early. So this becomes essentially an iterative loop where you're not only determining what you want to accomplish in this meeting, but you're figuring out how to measure the outcome, and you're thinking post-meeting how you will then gauge success. So in fact, we didn't really understand how well companies did in any of those three. All we know is if you simply do those three things, your meetings are judged to be among the very most effective. So anyway, there's lots to elaborate on related to this topic, planning, but I think it's worthy of a lot of additional exploration. Companies who really want to do a good job with their meetings.
Yeah, and Bob, you make a great point. I mean, now is the time when you need to start to do this. If you haven't started already, this is a good first step. I mean, just start sort of opening up the lines of communication, even if it's not on other people's radar screens just yet, because before you know it, you're going to be into your year-end sort of push, and it's just hard to get people's attention at that point. So the next item here is around leaning out your agenda and minimizing lectures. And this is where, again, by doing sort of the top-down and bottom-up planning like we just suggested is really important. Because what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to separate the must-haves from the nice-to-haves, okay? There is no conceivable way that you can accommodate, 8 one-hour presentations in a day. No way is that going to happen. That will result in a terrible experience, and people just they're not going to track with you. So my recommendation, and again, this is based on being probably in about 6 or 7 of these now, these virtual summits where it's back to back to back to back, and some that have worked better than others. I would say 30 minutes maximum presentation length. I would have no more than 2 back-to-back lectures, and I would have no more than 6 lectures in a day. So I'm going to share with you just a sample agenda in a minute here, but this is what I would sort of challenge you with. Now, you're going to fill the day with other things, other types of activities and interactions and that sort of thing, but in terms of just pure sort of information transfer, I would really, really strongly recommend not exceeding this. The other thing is just the number of days. I mean, you can do this for a day or two. Once you get past the second day, boy, it becomes tough. So again, it's really leaning out the agenda. It's separating the must-haves from the nice-to-haves. That is just critically important. And and what it's going to also mean is you're probably going to have to tell some people no. But that just comes with the job. So next is around incorporating interesting and interactive sessions. So again, like there are executives and leaders and whatnot in the company that are going to want their airtime in front of the sales team, but when you take a step back, there always seems to be certain sessions. And again, I've done dozens of these now, and you do evaluations and you just see what people like, right? So the real interesting sessions seem to be voice of the customer. So whenever you can have a customer, or maybe it's a fireside chat with a customer or a roundtable with a group of customers that tell you about, either how they bought their solution from your organization, how they conducted their sort of sourcing and evaluation process, that is unbelievably valuable. Okay, everybody loves that, getting customers. So to shape out your agenda, just think about that. I mean, get some customers on that agenda. People will flock to those sessions. They will never miss them. The other is peer sharing insights. So maybe it's insights on a big win, right? Or how they really managed or grew a strategic account or a global account. People want to hear from their peers, because oftentimes when their peers talk, they're sharing real life experience. Okay, this is not the sage on the stage sharing their whatever what they did 25 years ago and telling everybody how great they are. This is hardcore insight that a salesperson can take and use the next day and be more successful. So getting that peer insight is just really valuable. Competitive and market intelligence, that's something that's usually really well received as well, especially if you're in a rapidly changing marketplace, or maybe you have a competitor that is being a bit of a pain in your butt and you need to sell more effectively against them. And then finally is ask the expert. But again, ask the expert, they can be interesting. It depends on who the expert is and what they're talking about. Could be a product or a solution, or it could be a certain, maybe a skill area, or somebody that's an expert in a particular market. Again, people tend to like that. So these sessions always get the highest marks, and they seem to be the best attended. But then there's also breakout sessions. So again, I really encourage you to do some of these breakouts, because these breakouts are where some of that networking can actually happen. It's hard to network, when you're on a session like this and you've got 200 other people on the line. But when you break people down into smaller groups, like probably I would say no more than 10, or into teams, maybe by region or by line of business, that's where they can and give them a problem to troubleshoot. So for example, oftentimes what happens is that there are these big strategic initiatives that get rolled out, and people need an opportunity to really kind of internalize these initiatives and just to kind of think about what it means to them, what they need to do differently. And it's great to have again, an active breakout session where people are sharing their feelings and their thoughts around what they're going to do. Same with things like around executing critical sales activities. So, maybe prospecting, right? Or closing. Those are always two big ones. Or negotiating. Okay, you can get, Guru XYZ, to come in and pontificate, but it's often better just to have people internally who are really good at doing it, who do it in the context of the types of solutions that you sell, and that really know your stuff, know your customers, know your organization and sort of their tendencies. That can be really valuable. Breakout sessions on outselling a competitor, again, very important. Who beat company XYZ? Well, what did they do? Or everybody now. Let's share what we did to beat a particular competitor in a particular deal. And then of course, resolving challenging objections. We always get those. But those breakout sessions tend to be, again, people like those. You want them to be inclusive, right? You want people you may have to be facilitated a little bit. So to draw the insight out of people, you got a lot of smart people. Not everyone, is as comfortable sort of talking in front of a crowd or as confident. So whatever you can do to help extract that, I think you build that engagement. I mean, engagement was one of the big things, right, that we saw. So build that engagement and get some really good ideas in the process. Next here is just a sample agenda that I spun up, and you can see here where it does look full, but it starts at 9 and it ends at 4. Okay, again, just trying to accommodate some of these work from home issues. Maybe an hour and 15-minute lunch break. Again, work from home, time for people to sort of just whatever, tend to other matters that come up, either work related or not. You'll see here, CEO welcome, CRO welcome, recap. Again, half-hour sessions, right? Half hour, quick break, customer roundtable. Then we get the CRO, then we take lunch, right? Then have a breakout. Then we have the CTO, take a break, top producers. Then we do a breakout, and then we wrap up. So again, just an example of an agenda that is sensitive, right, to the fact that people are in front of Zoom. They've got other things happening. You need to really, like I said, lean down the agenda, focus on the most important things from a information lecture transfer, and do as much as you possibly can to get people working together, get them problem solving, get them troubleshooting, get them engaged. That's going to help drive the networking and the interaction and the engagement. Okay. So now we're on to social activities. And here, Bob, is where we could probably use some help from the audience. But again, I think one of the reasons why you want to do your surveying of people is, do they even want social activities? I mean, I've been on a few, virtual happy hours and, stuff like that. And it's kind of like, hey, this is okay. But it's 6 o'clock, and my kids need dinner, or I got to get them ready to do their homework, or I got to pick them up from practice or something, right? Like it's one thing when you're in Vegas and you're in that mindset and you have no other distractions. It's like, great. Yeah, we're going to go and, see the, the one-hit wonder rock band, right? that we managed to hire. But, these other things, again, like so much of this depends on the culture of your organization and the people. And maybe you make some of these optional, or, maybe they make them all optional, but just some ideas that I've seen, virtual wine tasting, the comedian, magician, musician. I mean, the comedian and the magician are kind of fun. Musician, again, it's more passive, right? I think a magician or a comedian can kind of get people engaged. I've done Second City improv classes. They're kind of fun. They're a little bit corny, but they kind of, get people to put their guard down. And at the end of the day, they tend to be a good time. And then things that are competitive, whether it's like charades, a talent contest, some kind of a game show. Bob, do you want to shed some insight on this? I know, we chatted about this and some of the things that you've thought through.
Yeah, incidentally, I have made an appeal to our audience for anyone who wants to share some stories or interesting experiences with their sales kickoff experience. And this would be a good topic to do that with. But no takers so far, but I'll keep you posted. Okay. But you have an opinion about these sort of things. So I believe that these kickoff meetings, maybe really any sales meeting, has to check 3 boxes. That is, developing people, motivating people, and socializing people. And with these virtual events, I think they do a great job with the first 2 things. They can be helpful to build new skills. They can actually be motivating, but they don't help us socialize really, especially if we don't know everyone else. So I think, I would aim for these kinds of activities, the fun activities that help people get to know each other. And my theory is they'll work best if you layer a layer of friendly competition on top of them. So look for things that you can do that would force people to interact, even if it's on a frivolous topic, but also award winners and losers, or at least winners and maybe losers, just to make it fun. I think that works well with most people, but especially with salespeople.
Yeah, and I think that's why, of all these things, I probably enjoyed the improv the best, because if you have a good improv leader, they'll do that. They'll kind of put you in a moment, and you got to do something kind of silly, but everyone's doing it, and you kind of have fun, and you can, whatever, clap for people, and maybe vote for the best one, right? Some good stuff there.
So I'll also interject a little bit. This is, I guess, a bit of a commercial for an app I came across not long ago called Meet Away. Meet Away is free. It's Meet, MEET Away, not MEAT. And it basically facilitates at random one-on-one video discussions. And so it's easy to set up, and you can even create a bit of an algorithm to promote certain matches over others. And so something like that's very helpful. You can do the same thing in Zoom breakout rooms with a little more elbow grease. But I found that app to be worth a look for anyone who's trying to, maybe use one-on-one meetings to foster interaction.
Yep. Any takers on your request there, Bob? And it's okay if there's okay. Well, let's put
them on camera without their knowledge,
I got
in school class.
Okay, so I can go back, Bob, to the deck here. So the next here, again, to Bob's point, is enhancing the sales kickoff through gamification. So this is something that my company does. We use 3D avatars and gaming engines to actually create sales games. We call it the simulator for practicing sales. And whether, again, there are all sorts of ways that you can do it. But what we have found is that this is, again, it's a great way to inject a little bit of friendly competition into your event. The other thing it does, it holds people accountable, because what you have is you have a leaderboard, right? So, again, we're kind of putting people on the spot a little bit, but we're paying good money, we're taking time, and we're dedicating resource to this sales kickoff. So people have to take it seriously, and you really want to, whatever, they need to know it, right? You need to hold them accountable, and the leaderboard is certainly one way. So what we encourage people to do, kind of to Bob's point, right? Whether you find an app or whether you design your own game, the other cool things about gamification is that you can carry that through. So you can kick it off at the sales kickoff. So have some sort of an immediate challenge, maybe to learn the platform, regardless of what it is. If it, make sure that whatever you're asking people to do is aligned with the strategic priorities. I mean, yeah, you can have frivolous stuff, and that's great for the socializing, but for the real kind of important stuff, this is an important opportunity here. It's a good opportunity for you to make sure people leave that kickoff or know, they leave the kickoff and shortly after they're reinforcing and applying all the things that you want them to do in order to give them the best opportunity to achieve their goal for next year, right? So align the challenge with the strategic priorities. This whole notion of teamwork, making the dream work. I mean, get people working together in teams. I think to Bob's point, get them troubleshooting stuff. I think with teamwork, what's great, especially if you want to get people who don't know each other to know each other better, put them on a team, right? You can randomly select teams, you can mix people, you can do it somewhat strategically if you want, but getting people working together is a great way for them to get to know each other better, right? Develop a personal and a professional relationship, and at the same time, maybe solve some problems that are going to be really important to them and to your organization. And then give people a reason to practice and return, right? So again, it's one thing, sales kickoff, typically, just by their nature, you're absorbing a lot of information. You're trying to figure out, what you need to do different next year or in the coming year. But then to Bob's point, when you leave, it shouldn't end when you leave. Okay, there's got to be some pull through so that this thing is constantly reinforced. It's no different than any other training, right? You go to training, if it's not reinforced and if people aren't, being held accountable and coached to it, then it's probably not going to stick. So again, the gamification engines out there are those that give people an opportunity to practice and return. And with that, you have, for example, the leaderboard. Well, you can have a leaderboard of people coming out of the sales kickoff. But again, they're trying to absorb a lot of information, so they can maybe get a certain number of points. But then as they, give them some time for things to digest and have a checkpoint, right? Because you want to reinforce the behaviors and the skills and the knowledge. So give people an opportunity afterwards to practice and to continue to demonstrate that they know what they need to do. So part of it is the communication cadence, and offer a substantial award and celebrate success. So it's making it real. Give it some teeth. So with that, Bob, just got a bit of a summary here. We've got 5 or 10 minutes to take some Q&A if we want. Anybody is interested in whatever, sending me some questions after. There's my email address. Happy to help them whatever we can.
Cool. A number of things coming up on chat, so I want to tee up some of them. Some of them, Dario, are in fact related to your product, and I'm going to defer those to an offline discussion with those interested. I'll send those to you rather than talk about the finer points of the product itself. There is one question. Yeah, so let's do that. So anyway, let's then instead focus on a few questions that are maybe more general in nature. And one of them has to do with, what do you pre-record and what do you make live? And I think this is a really vital question. I'm so happy that it came up in chat. I wonder if you had any thoughts about how to talk about that, think about that. You know, in education, we call that synchronous and asynchronous. But there's something to be said for getting that mix right.
Yeah. No, you know, that's the beauty of being virtual. I mean, for example, if you need, you know, a 30-minute presentation from your CEO, you know, that's something you might want to just have he or she record, you know, because they have to be really tight with their message. And that's one of those situations where you don't want any technological glitches to interfere with the delivery of that message. So, you know, that's particularly fair game. I think there's probably going to be like a cost benefit analysis. You know, and it's funny. I mean, I think about the downside. Like if it's primarily a lecture, I don't really know, Bob, great to get your perspective, if there is a downside of, you know, recording versus live. It doesn't appear to be, but in terms of the interactive stuff, right? Like that stuff, obviously you need to have live. So Bob, I don't know if you've got, I mean, I know you do a lot of these events. So what's your thought on that?
Yeah, well, you know, I would actually default to some opinion about this from educators that I know who think about this a lot. You know, this is pedagogy and, you know, how you do this. And there's this movement called flipping the classroom, which basically takes the approach that, you know, if you're just trying to get information, you know, like that you have in a teapot and you're trying to pour it into the head of the salesperson, you know, just record that. But they probably won't learn it that way either if they're only listening to it. What you should do instead is make them do pre-work that's recorded and on demand, and then give them a problem to solve in some live session. And that, you know, and make it impossible for them to solve the problem unless they've done the pre-work and they start asking a lot of questions and working with each other. And so that's ideal, I think. Now, when you're talking about, you know, staging a sales kickoff and the head of product marketing wants to talk, or the head of or the general counsel wants to talk about new legal procedures, you know, it's going to be tough to do that, to have a fun exercise around the new for getting contracts approved.
Right.
So I think then you have to be quite tactful and graceful about trying to push some of that to pre-recorded, and then maybe do some testing or something like that.
Yeah, you know, Bob, you know what, an idea for that might be, if you pre-record sort of like the lecture, make it available in advance, assign it as pre-work, and then have the general counsel there have like a Q&A session, you know, but orchestrate it in such a way so that, you know, if nobody has any questions, he's not just sitting up, you know, on the virtual stage like a fool. You know, that's part of what the, you know, you as the host, right? You have to anticipate that. You have to, you know, talk to he or she in advance and find out, well, what points do you really want to reinforce? Because there's probably a chance that either people haven't watched it or they watched it, but they haven't absorbed it. And then you can kind of do the reinforcement through the Q&A, right? It's a little bit staged, but at the same time, it's kind of like, okay, well, you know, like, you know, I know now that, you know, one of the big things that's different is we have to, you know, get this approval versus that approval. Well, you know, what if this approval, you know, you can't get that approval by the end of the quarter, blah, 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 right? So that might be a way. So it's all in how it's like you're playing Jeopardy, right? It's how do you stage the questions so that there's learning value and that you're reinforcing the points that you want to reinforce.
Yeah, you're really making it more engaging that way too. And I think the danger is, especially those presentations that we don't control in the sales function, they can just be checking a box, and it's, you know, it's torture.
They don't know they don't know the audience as well. I mean, they have generalizations, but there's a tendency for them not to accommodate that. It's like, I'm the general counsel, and, you know, I'm like this, And I know there's a bunch of salespeople and they do all this crazy stuff, but I don't know how to adapt to that. That's not the world I live in. I live in the world of, regulations and rules and attorneys. And so I'm going to go buy the book. And meanwhile, it's like, well, you can go buy the book, but no one's going to absorb that.
Yes. So a couple of quick questions. We'll try to knock these out fast. One is, any advice on multinational companies that have participants that are distributed across many time zones?
Yeah, again, it's easy to be US centric, I guess. That's a tough one. It's about, I think, really understanding the culture of your organization and really understanding just, how important it is for people to to be on live versus things they can get recorded. So I don't know that there's any easy answer to that one, Bob. Any thoughts and suggestions?
Although maybe using some of the pre-recorded things, that's really makes it that issue also. And then one last quick question. We had someone who was asking if we were aware of any applications that would allow them to sorry, I've lost the question. Okay, so I would refer everyone, I guess, to the chat. There, in fact, are a number of good suggestions. Apps like Cookie Box and Mentimeter, or Minty, I think is the name of the app. We've used that before.
Cool.
Anyway, yeah. So and sadly, we're running short of time, so I guess I should leave questions there. Dario Priolo, thank you so much for being with us. This is a great presentation, very timely. And I'd just like to thank you for your contributions to our audience and for sharing today.
Thanks, Bob. And thanks everybody for your time. And I just want to say how much I appreciate everything that you're doing with the SMA, Bob. I think it's really valuable, and keep up the great work.
Well, thank you very much. So I will draw us to a close, and I would encourage our members to stay tuned for the next Sales Management Association presentation. And let's see when that's coming up. That will be on October 20th, when we'll do a session on motivating salespeople in challenging environments. You can learn about that session and many other sessions that we have coming up on our website at salesmanagement.org. I'm Bob Kelly, Sales Management Association Chairman and Founder, on behalf of Dario Priolo. Thank you for your time and attention today. Goodbye until next time.